Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Regina Liang, the director of VAFF Industry. Thank you for tuning in with us to the VAFF Industry Insight Panel, How to Web Series Tokens, created by Winnifred John, case study with Canada Media Fund at the 25th Annual Vancouver Asian Film Festival. Before we begin by acknowledging the land that we are broadcasting at is the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and First Nations, as well as the Mississauga for the credits, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat people. So I would like to thank our sponsors, presenting sponsors, Canada Media Fund, and our public funder, Canada Council for the Arts. So I'd like to introduce our moderator for our session today, Andrew Jong, and he is a writer, director based in Toronto. His films are screened at festivals around the world and have been broadcast on Air Canada, CBC, and the Super Channel. His short film, Ma, won the best short films at the Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. And then his digital series, Millions, also won Best Director of Marcel Web Fest in France. His feature film, White Elephant, won Best Feature Film, Best Director, and Best Writer of the Real World Film Festival. And then Best Canadian Feature and Best Overall Performance at our 2020 Vancouver Asian Film Festival, and then Best Ensemble and Set Design at the Canada Film Fest. So let's welcome Andrew.
So we have a great panel for you guys. We're going to do a case study on Winnifred John's tokens. So I want to introduce our first guest, from the Canada Media Fund, Monica Keane. She's worked at Telefilm Canada since 1991 in various capacities. She began her career at Telefilm as a development analyst, has also worked as a feature film analyst, and is currently a CMF-PA business analyst. For the past 14 years, she has worked primarily as a member of the Canada Media Fund's program administration team, helping to administer a number of funds, including the Indigenous, POV, diverse languages, performance envelope, and digital linear series programs. Welcome, Monica Keane.
Thank you. Hello.
And our next guest is Winnifred John. She's an award-winning alumna of the Women in the Director's Chair. Since being named one of Playback's 5 to Watch in 2018, she has gone on to direct episodes of Coroner, Heartland, Pretty Hard Cases, Nurses, Endlings, and Private Eyes, and most recently owns upcoming The Kings of Napa, the CW's Kung Fu, and Netflix's Firefly Lane. In 2020, she received a Directors Guild of Canada award for her work on Hallmark's Mystery 101, Dead Talk, and was recognized with the Sandy Ross Award. Winifred created, wrote, and directed the comedic web series Tokens, becoming the first short-form series to be nominated for Best Ensemble at the ACTRA Awards, and went on to receive 4 Canadian Screen Award nominations and winning for Best Direction. Please welcome Winifred.
Hi, everyone.
I hope you guys are doing well. I'm happy and excited to chat with you guys today. As somebody who's created and made a web series myself, I know it's a very difficult road, but I hope we can enlighten some of the viewers that might be interested in creating a web series or just is interested in you as a filmmaker, Winifred, and maybe get people on to watching Tokens. So I just want to start off firstly with talking about the series itself. So I know that web series is a difficult format to work in because it's short form but serialized. So my first question was, what was the inspiration for Tokens, and how did this format lend itself to the story?
Well, actually, I've been telling this story. The inspiration for Tokens was actually from a text message that I received from an actor who I was trying to meet, and she said that she wouldn't be able to meet me because she was on call. And, you know, jokingly, I just said on-call actor, and unfortunately it didn't exist. It doesn't exist, but it was, she was working in the industry. And then I just realized that it was a web series idea, that we can have these short little fun stories where I can put actors through their paces in very awkward and fun situations. And so that was the inspiration. And then I took it to Women in the Director's Chair, where I workshopped it in 2016.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess you feel like the story lends itself to the format of short form.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't come into web series as a writer and creator, and so I felt going into the first funding round at Telefilm Talent to Watch, that I felt that my, I guess the talent or what I felt like I had to work with as a writer was short form. I didn't have a full-length story, but I thought if I made them bite-sized, I could probably work out stories that had a beginning, middle, and end. I've done short films, written short films that way. And so I felt like that might be a nice stepping stone to a longer format. And that's where I found web series to be quite supportive of that sort of writing style.
Right. Did you find any challenges when you were trying to compress the story in these 5-minute or 10-minute sound story bites?
I didn't find challenges. What I think the biggest challenge that I had was that I had a very big scope. If anyone who has watched Tokens and other web series, they don't usually have such a huge ensemble cast. So we had 27 speaking parts, which we shot over 8 days in multiple locations. And I think the actual format of the show, you really gave a big scope of the industry and what I wanted to portray and what I wanted to show. And so I think in terms of a web series, that was quite unusual to have such a large cast.
For sure. I mean, I can imagine like working with that many actors can be quite a nightmare. So I wanted to talk about a little bit more, because I'm sure a lot of the aspiring filmmakers out there, the biggest thing for them is funding, right? So if you can walk us through the process in securing funding for Tokens, and any tips for any aspiring web series filmmakers on getting funding, and specifically with the CMF. So Monica, you can chime in as well.
Okay, but Monica, just to clarify, CMF funding is for second seasons.
Yes, for the second.
Yeah, that's right. For second and subsequent seasons.
So when I made Token Season 1, I knew that. So going into funding rounds, I knew that CMF, and knowing that I wanted to create a second season. That was a goal from the onset, knowing that I needed to have create a web series that was successful, was seen, won awards. That was actually a goal that I set out, and I really put a lot of marketing and push behind it, a lot of publicity and a lot of social behind it, so that I could get seen by CMF as a successful web series. And you know that web series can get lost. They're created, they're put up on YouTube. It's very hard to direct viewers to those. And so I came in with a specific plan. I think that was part of it, knowing that CMF was going to only fund successful second seasons.
And if I can just jump in here, I just want to define, or I want to explain what the CMF's definition of a season is. It's really just 3 episodes of at least 2 minutes each. So, it's not like a typical television season where you're looking at 13 episodes. In this case, we're defining it as 3 episodes of 2 minutes. So I think it's an easier way to kind of get into the I think it's like a beginning step to maybe more long form programming eventually. So
would you say like one of the main tenets for CMF is looking at whether the series is quote unquote successful? So what are some of the criteria that are looked at to deem a web series is successful moving into season 2?
So from the CMF's point of view, we actually, in our guidelines, we have something it's called the evaluation grid, and we try and be really transparent with how we score projects. In fact, if you're successful or if you're not successful, you can go, like, after the decisions are made, you have access to the notes that the jury has submitted for your project, so that you can have a look and just kind of see where your project was strong and where it may need some more work. We have that evaluation grid. There's also something called a list of required documents, which is another, like, it's a separate document, but it's available on the CMF website, and it helps you build a really strong and compelling application package. Sometimes I look at a project and it's like, oh wow, this is great, but they only submitted an outline for one episode. I think that the more you can provide, in terms of the creative material to really give a sense of what your project is going to look like, that's going to help the jury. And I should mention that, as a business analyst, we have business analysts internally reviewing the project, but the CMF also brings on board an international jury. I mean, people from France, from South America, from the States, from Canada. And there's they have some really worthwhile notes that you can take away and, have a look at, decide to incorporate into your project or not. But it's a worthwhile process to have a look at what they've written about your project.
So just to clarify, it's the digital linear series program we're talking about here, just to clarify for the viewers.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there any other tips that, Winifred, that you can give in terms of just securing funding in general for a web series?
Yeah, I think part of it is knowing what your series is about. I know I've assisted and helped a lot of people with their applications, but you really have to have that hook. You have to be able to sell that hook. People have to watch the hook and be able to tell other people, because it's a web series that only exists a lot of times through word of mouth, and then obviously through Facebook ads or Twitter ads or sponsored ads. But for people to watch it, someone has to have watched it and know what the show is about. And I think, I think tokens, when I was pitching it initially, people didn't understand it, but it was very concise in the storytelling in each episode. You really got to go through the process. And I think with that sort of web series, I was able to identify and show to CMF and other funders what the show is about and how it has opened up not only a conversation, it was a comedic conversation, but it also lent itself to a broader scope in terms of not just being entertaining, but also being topical as well.
So this one's for Monica specifically. So what was it about tokens that stood out to you, and you felt that it was a project that the CMF should support? Yeah.
Well, I can't go into details about a specific project. I mean, Winifred, you can feel free to provide that info. But what I can say is that the projects that are most successful are the ones that really focus on what our evaluation grid defines, is like what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be looking at audience metrics for the previous season. to see, like, we're looking at what you're providing, the numbers from YouTube or CBC Gem or whoever, wherever your project was available. We're looking at how, like, if you had submitted your project to festivals, or if it had been invited to festivals, any type of critical acclaim, that is all taken into consideration. And also we're looking at market channel partners, whether or not your initial market channel partner is returned for this second or subsequent season. We're looking at the kind of funding that you have, that your distribution plan, whether that's in place. So, looking at your experience, the team's experience, cast and crew. We also score on gender parity and diversity. That is taken into consideration as well. So, and again, it's a transparent process. It's all listed in the evaluation grid.
Cool. So I just wanted to get next into the nitty-gritty of the actual production of tokens. Can you walk us through the production process of the show? I know you just recently wrapped your second season, so it's probably fresh in your brain. So from pre-production all the way to post-production, what's your process as a filmmaker?
Well, I'm very lucky because I've been in the industry for a long time. So partially for season 2, we're in a COVID world. So I had to reach out to all of the initial cast to see if they felt comfortable coming back to work on the project. That was something that we identified early on to see if the reoccurring cast wanted to come back. And then we started building the writing to that. We had a very large cast and we knew that we had to reduce. After COVID, we had actually planned a bigger second season. We have actually a very strong second season, but it didn't have the crowd scenes that we were looking for when we had submitted. I feel as though we've come back with stronger cast. So I start with casting and I write to that. And this season, our scripts are much more mature in a lot of respects. And so it becomes a serialized story, which takes place over the episodes. And so I guess the first thing is the creation is my first process. And then there's all the nitty gritty of pre-production, which is finding the locations. We have a new storyline. And so we had to find new locations that suited that storyline. And then, scheduling, we also have like a large cast. So it's trying to fit all these little puzzle pieces into one thing. One of our cast members was doing a cross-country trek and arrived back in time for her shoot dates and things like that. And one was, a lot of them are on network television shows. And so they had to finish their obligations on a network television show and then flew in for our show as well. So people coming from multiple places to come back to tokens was really challenging. And then finding the cast and crew, not everyone was able to come back. So we still have the same DOP, we have the same producer. We expanded the team to have more BIPOC elements. And so we have a BIPOC line producer and coordinator and all things like that we wanted to expand not only in our storytelling, but also in our cast and crew. And so because I have that sort of television and producing experience, that was sort of set up over a shorter time. And then we were in production. Next thing you know, we wrapped in 9 days. And now we're in the editing process.
My question is, so you having worked in TV quite a bit, you're very experienced in TV. So the transition from going to TV to web series, is there anything unique or different about it that you would say that you can give tips about to other filmmakers not having done TV before, and then just they're starting with web series?
I think part you can never be too prepared. I mean, it's the same in television as it is in web series. You're always looking to be prepared so that you're not spending money frivolously. There's smaller budgets, so you have to be prepared in terms of finding whether it's a prop or a location or a costume that you're looking for. And you have to be flexible. I think in web series, for sure, you have to be flexible and collaborative with all of your production designer, the cinematographer, the costume designer, all those things. You just want to be able to be specific about what you're looking for and give them enough lead time to find everything that you're looking for. I think a lot of times, sometimes simple writing and good storytelling and having a smaller cast is actually a good starting off point to emerging creators. I don't think necessarily going for all the cast that you can get and trying to juggle the stuff that we had to juggle with schedules and people being not available and having to shift things and it causes a lot more headaches for a lot of people who may not have that kind of experience in juggling schedules. I think having a smaller, solid story and strong storytelling is key.
So you'd advise not to have a cast as big as 27.
I don't know. I think even when I first wrote it, my producing partner, she herself was a bit worried about it, and I kept adding more because our schedule allowed for some people to pop in and pop out. And part of it was a strategy too, because I think the more people I had in the cast, a lot of times, social media is part of the way you get stuff known. And so, having people that felt strongly about the project, had a good experience on the project, understood what the story was about, and they wanted to talk about it, having 27 people talk about it at the same time was fantastic. I mean, we had we pitched at Primetime and won a package where we got additional marketing support. And so they helped us with additional marketing support. I think that sort of helped a lot.
So it was actually a pretty conscious choice to have that many characters, which is smart.
For me, I think it was a conscious choice. It was also a conscious choice to have that, given the scope of what I was trying to talk about. I was talking about the industry, the film industry, and there's so many people involved, and I wanted to have it reflect that, whether it's a director. We had 4 directors, a producer, a makeup artist, costume designer, ADs, PAs, actors, casting. So we kind of ran the gamut in that respect. And, and this year there's more. There was Sammy's parents had their commentary on that.
So I just wanted to ask specifically, so what's CMF's involvement in production, if any? For both of
Just
you can go ahead, Monica.
Writing the check. There's not a lot of involvement from the CMF other than we do pay up, the first payment is made at prep, and it is the majority of the funding. So we do provide that. But other than that, we're pretty hands-off.
It's an amazing fund. I think very strategic in terms of knowing that at prep is when you need most of the money, instead of you know how much you have to spend, you know what your cash flow is, all those sort of nitty-gritty business aspects. Having a majority of the funding at the top allows you to make the best project. And then once you do a first cut, then you look at the drawdowns, which is when you can access additional funding. Well, not additional funding, the rest of your funding. And so at certain benchmarks, you can access the rest of your funding, but you have to push through. You can't just, you really have to finish the project. And I think, CMF sees that, even producing a web series is difficult. And so they're looking at people who've managed to go from A to Z, right? And so a lot of people talk about web series, they write something, they make applications, but they don't finish. And so the big goal is to know what your skill set is and whether or not you can get to Z, right? You need to be able to finish and show that you can produce something.
So is there certain deadlines that CMF imposes when you provide the funds?
Yeah, so we basically go by your production schedule in terms of like the different key points, but our funding is released at prep, and then at for projects that have applied in this current fiscal season, you have actually until March 31st, 2024 to provide your phase 2 or your final cost documentation. And that's when you get the balance. But, you don't have to wait to March. Like, if it's sooner, then that's great. And you can close the file and move on. But yeah, I mean, we for the initial payment, we basically go with the production schedule.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think part of what was a really good partnership is that we secured our financing before COVID. And, our production schedule had to shift accordingly because it's something that I think the rest of the world has had to do too, right? You couldn't shoot for in anything for several months, and then we had to assess the safety. Those are all things to consider nowadays, and it should also apply to web series as well.
That's a good segue, because my next question was going to be, what were some of the unique challenges that you faced when making the series, or most recently the second season? Of course, now with COVID, it's changed things completely. So you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think COVID did create a challenge because we did, all the things that you would do in a smaller budget, you had to spend a little bit more in terms of having a box lunch, things like that created a little bit more, having more, finding locations that are bigger and can facilitate a larger crew, giving them more space to be safe. That cost a little bit more money. So trying to find cost savings throughout, but keeping everyone safe. We had twice a week testing. So all the things all the protocols that were used in television, we did the same on our show, just because we had such a large cast, and we had some older cast, so that we wanted to keep everybody feeling safe and coming on board a project like this.
So I can imagine that the production budget changed quite a bit from the pre-COVID when you had applied. So
yeah. There was some, CMF did provide some COVID support funds, and so we really took advantage of that and we provided masks and things like that, and goggles and testing kits and all of those things to our cast and crew. Like we, when we apply for certain funds, we really wanted to take advantage of those additional funds to keep our set really safe and running smoothly.
So were there any like creative concessions that you had to make?
We didn't make any. I think in a lot of ways, it really it made the creative actually stronger. We went to a different. We just did a different tract, and I think when you see it, and when Monica sees it, you'll be glad that we delayed a little bit. I think it's a very powerful season 2. We're really proud of it. I think, and the new cast that just got announced, we're very excited to have them on board as well.
Were there any other unique challenges that you had outside of COVID in terms of just making a web series itself?
I think part of it is, I think one of the unique challenges that we had was that I wanted to make it look like in a lot of ways, I wanted to make it a television series. And so we had very strong creative with our camera department. They were fantastic. I wouldn't say that those were challenges. I think a lot of times the challenges were always met with enthusiasm. I had a fantastic costume designer who came from theater, and I presented. I can't do spoiler alerts, right? But like I had this new costume that I said, I'm thinking of changing the ending, and we might need a new costume that is like spectacular. And I think her eyes. I said, don't worry, we're going to do it together. And we managed to pull off one of the most, I've never seen a costume like the one she provided. Monica, you're going to flip out. We flipped out. There's, and so she would win prizes for this costume.
I can't wait to see it.
It's so exciting. And so I kind of sprung it on her a little bit, and we kind of all the department's hair and makeup and costumes, we all sort of brought little bits of ideas and started collaborating and making phone calls and looking on the internet, making social. I posted, and then this costume came, and it was magic because it fit our lead actress like a glove. And it's just sort of, I think because I mentioned it and I didn't put as much, I told her I was going to support her, she really came through. I think it's that kind of thing. I think in our show is that I want to support creative people as well. It wasn't just my show. It was also giving opportunities to a lot of people to spread their own wings and take advantage of their own talents to add to the show. I think that's sort of this in the spirit of tokens.
So my next question is, I made a web series 10 years ago, and one of the most difficult things for me was that the marketing. Like as you said at the beginning, that it's very difficult to get a web series out there. There's just so many out there. There's so much content that you're fighting for people's attention for. So, but tokens was like, there was a lot of significant press. There was a lot of awards that you received, and really high viewership. So, what advice would you give in terms of how to market a web series? Because you're just one in a sea of other web series out there. So, what did you do differently that you can kind of impart on other people?
We spent the marketing fund. There's earmarked marketing fund with every funding application, and we didn't dip into that marketing. We actually spent that marketing fund with experts and a push. We did a lot of, we created assets. So there's gifts, there's little social videos. We created a new social campaign. We secured the same, we were identified as tokens on call, because tokens, while it was called tokens, it was very generic, very hard to find. And so having an SEO tokens on call made it very easy to find. So the series is called Tokens, but it had all the same socials. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all tokens on call. Website, tokens on call. So we kind of really geared our marketing so that if you couldn't go wrong, because it didn't have a different name anywhere else. It was always the same. And, I think that helps a lot. Having something that's memorable helps. I've seen, people create names for shows or something that is hard to remember. I think that is really important too, to find the right title and the right hashtag. You have to learn what your hashtags might be and what might be trending, and so that you can find viewers that way. And so we did a lot of research on marketing. I learned a lot about marketing, having a marketing plan as well. We really spent that time and effort to really push it out, and having cast who also participated in that, and really having a grassroots sort of plan and not ever giving up with all of that really helped. We also learned, a lot of it, we learned about the Web Series World Cup. That's something that, gives you a list of all the Web Series festivals that are listed in the cup to try and get as many points as possible. So then they become sort of, I guess, the standard web festivals that you get to, and getting nominations for that. I think I've lost track of how many nominations Tokens has had, but it's in at least 30, 40 nominations. And then, having a campaign push for the Canadian CSAs, Canadian Screen Awards, was also something that was very important to us. And, a lot of people, we had 4 nominations. And so we did a marketing push based on that. It was the first digital series to be nominated for the Toronto ACTRA Awards. And it was up against Schitt's Creek, Kim's Convenience, and with an E. So being in that company put us in that company. And so we used that as marketing. Everything was marketing. So, so then, because we're tongue in cheek, we could say, our claim to fame is that we lost to Schitt's Creek. And that was the year that they won everything. So we can say, we're with all the other losers who lost to Schitt's Creek. And so even a loss became a win for us, because we found a way to spin it on its head and make it a little bit fun as well.
So you'd say don't neglect the marketing budget.
I think the marketing budget is well worth spending that marketing budget on doing that. And I think that's part of how we got people to notice it and to see it. And I think with that, that's how you get other people to see it. There's traditional marketing for television, and whether it's bus advertising or public transit advertising or billboards, we did the digital equivalent of all of that. And so it was something that was around everywhere, I think.
Maybe this is too specific a question, but what would you say is the percentage of the budget that you would dedicate to marketing in general? Is it a significant percentage?
It's a significant percent. It was almost 20%.
Right. So
Yeah.
almost a quarter of the budget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Is CMF involved in the marketing at all in terms of the projects that they support?
No, so initially when we review the application, we do score the project on the strength of the marketing campaign, and something that I've seen enough marketing plans, and sometimes they become like a cookie cutter, and so what we're looking for is something that is unique, that kind of takes that unique aspect of the project and runs with it, and really kind of exploits that unique aspect. So like just having just a social media campaign, I mean, that everybody's doing that, but taking pinpointing various festivals and creating real buzz for your project, that's something that we're looking for. But other than once the project is selected, we're hands off. We leave that to the producing team to do.
Cool. So last question. Filmmaking is really, really hard. We all know this, right? So what would your advice be for emerging creators determined to make their first web series? Even after facing rejection after rejection, what kind of tips would you give in terms of just keep going? How do you make it happen?
I think part of it is that you really have to believe in the project. I think there are you have to hit every single door. You just can't stop. I think we were lucky when we got our first fund, which was Telefilm's Talent to Watch. We thought that was going to open doors. And then we applied to other grants and we kept getting rejection after rejection after rejection. And like a smarter producer would have probably reduced the creative, but I didn't want to reduce the creative. So we just actually kept applying until the very last application, which was the Bell Fund. That's also a great having that come on board was really useful and helpful to us. They came in again this season, but it's really hard because every fund is oversubscribed. Every fund has. I'm sure Monica and all of the other funders have had to reject viable, worthwhile projects. It's so hard. I mean, we were shortlisted for IPF and we didn't get IPF. I was devastated. It's really hard. You have to keep picking. I had to pick myself up. I had to say, oh, forget about them, move on, and I think that having that attitude really helped the project. But I know I've been with other projects and had pitched and gone everywhere, and it hasn't been successful. I can't say that necessarily it's the only way to go, but sometimes you have to learn from that, and that might be the process, is to say, okay, maybe not this project. And I've had that with some short films. They didn't get into film festivals or whatever. And I have to say, well, I created a great project, but it's not the time. But I did knock on every single door for every single, I knocked on every door before I gave up.
So you'd say exhaust all your potential avenues.
That's the way I am. I know that it's not necessarily the way everybody is, and it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
That's part of being a filmmaker.
It's not for the faint of heart, and even though now I'm working in television, I love creating my own projects. I love being able to tell my own stories, and I love being able to uplift and bring other people into projects and give them opportunities. Part of Tokens, while it gave me an opportunity to direct for the first time, it also gave a lot of other people their firsts. And I don't take that for granted, that as a creator, as a producer, is something that I'd love to continue doing. I'm starting with web series, and hopefully it'll translate to series and it becomes a success story. I think when Monica says, a successful series, it can be 3 episodes at 2 minutes. That is doable. That to me is something you can even self-produce and get it out there. That's 6 minutes, right? That's something that's a short film. That's doable, and it's bringing your tribe together, bringing a lot of collaborators together who feel the same way, and then you can do it and then put it out there and market it, and put it into festivals, and hopefully they see it and they see it and feel connected to it, and then that's how you build your community.
I mean, I can keep asking you more questions about your directing style and how you find the time doing a web series in between directing for TV, but we have questions from the audience, so I want to give them a chance to ask some questions. The first question is, what is the typical funding available for web series that are 3 to 5 episodes? I guess this is a question for both Monica and
I guess depending on the provinces, there's always your provincial funding body. I'm from Ontario, so it's Ontario Creates. The Bell Fund is also another funding stream. Unfortunately, Telefilm Talent to Watch no longer funds web series for first seasons. There's always self-funding. I've done crowdfunding for short films. Those are all viable options for funding. And then I guess, there's, if you can sell it to a CBC Gem or an idea there's obviously funding, like a sales. Monica, you have some other?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say there's also tax credits. Some provinces have tax credits that are available. You mentioned crowdfunding campaigns, market channel partners, distributors. But yeah, you really have to work hard to get all that funding together.
Is there a standard or typical range of funding specifically that a series will receive? Like, what kind of numbers are you looking at? I'm asking specifically.
Oh, like budget?
Yeah, in terms of budget. Like, so what would be the typical range of funds that a web series would receive?
Honestly, we've at the CMF, we've seen everything like from small budgets to really, like higher budgets. But I mean, the higher the budget, the more work you have to do to try and fund it, because the CMF's digital linear series, the cap is I think $250,000. So you have to take that into consideration.
Right.
And you have to do a lot of calculating because they don't, a lot of funds own. You have to know who comes in first, who comes in second. You have to apply to them in a certain order, because if you don't get one fund, some funds are last in, and those things become. It's a juggling act, because if you don't get one fund and you're now going for last in, and they only fund 75% of your budget, then you have to figure out how you're going to find 25%, whether it's private funding or crowdfunding. All of that has to be secured before you can apply to that fund that's last in.
Okay.
So you really have to like spend a lot of time researching
Right.
all of that.
And I guess that would be also finding a producer that is well versed in that would probably be helpful as well. If you're not a producer yourself.
Oh wait, here's my marketing. Here.
There you go. See, that was intentional, wasn't it?
I was.
Right?
Yes.
Right. So the next question is for Winifred. What's next for you?
I am developing tokens as a half-hour series, half-hour comedy. So we received development funding from Belfund to write it. We're a little bit delayed, again, with all of the things that are happening, but it should be delivered hopefully by the end of this year.
That's really exciting.
I know, I'm really excited. We had my partner and I received VAFF. We were part of the first cohort of VAFF Spark. Unfortunately, VAFF at that since the time we received it, has only been digital, hasn't gone into a live person-to-person, and so we're in the process of finding, we have a distributor, but we want a sales agent, but we want to find where we might find a home for the show, and I think we're looking not only in Canada but internationally as well.
Anything you can talk about in terms of your TV work that you're working on and what's coming up next for you?
I just finished Kung Fu. So I was the first Asian female director on that. I just directed in season 2. I'm really excited about that. I can't wait for it to air. And I think it starts in March.
That's awesome. Yeah, I heard about that. I'm really excited because I do watch the show and I have friends that work on that show. And yeah, I'd love to hear that you're the first Asian director on that. So I have a couple more questions since we have some time. My last question would just be for Winifred. Your directing style. So how would you say you work and collaborate with everyone on set, and that might be different from other filmmakers out there? Any directing tips you can give specifically to emerging filmmakers?
Well, I do a lot of preparation. I try to understand this, there's something called the tone meeting, which is you have this meeting with the writer of the show, and so I really get in behind what their intention is. And it's my favorite meeting, and it's where I feel like we're collaborating the most and trying to get to understand what they want, and that's probably my most creative time, is to find out what they're looking for, find out what the story is about, and then I start visualizing it. I walk through the spaces and I visualize it, and then get everybody excited about how we're going to shoot it. I think enthusiasm is probably key to some of my successes, that I really believe in what I'm doing, and that kind of has been infectious.
What would you say about moving from TV to web series? Obviously, the budgets are much smaller in web series, so of course the crew and cast that you're working with might not necessarily have the same amount of experiences here. So how is it navigating that, going from TV to a web series?
I think you have to take on a mentorship role in web series. I'm lucky to be in a position where I can mentor people, and I take that as a sense of pride to be able to give opportunities to people. And I think given my experience, Tokens is it's almost like a community event.
especially since we have a cast of 27 plus people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question. What are the biggest mistakes or omissions that you've seen on CMF applications? This is for Monica.
Sometimes, well, not providing enough creative material. I think, as creators, you have an idea of what your project is going to be, but you have to be able to really provide that sense of what your project is going to be for the jurors. So like I mentioned earlier, like just providing one outline, it gives you a sense, but if you provide a full episode script, then you're giving the juror more of a view of what your project is going to be. So, review the guidelines. You always have an opportunity to call me or any of my colleagues that are working on the digital linear series before the deadline. And, if you have any questions, if you're reading the guidelines and you're not quite sure about something, feel free to reach out. We're all very happy to help, and if you've applied and you were rejected one year, take a look at those notes and see, what you can take away from those notes to improve your application for the next fiscal year. So yeah, the review that evaluation grid, review the guidelines, and then look at that checklist, the document checklist, go through it line by line, make sure that you're submitting all of the documents, because basically once you submit, that's it. As soon as you hit submit, we can't go back and say, oh, you're missing this or, this document, because then it just doesn't become fair to other projects that are applying to the same funds. So you just need to make sure that you have a good, detailed, complete application.
I think my tip for that also is that you have to dedicate time to it. It's not something that you can rush. We've had multiple successful applications, and they took over a week to prepare the packaging. And that's after we read, as soon as the guidelines come out, we read it, we start breaking it down into checklists, into maybe I take the checklist and I put them on separate pages so that we can start filling it out. We have working documents throughout that, a month leading up until the application. And then we spend a full time editing the entire document over and over again. And in that, the dedicate 2 actual full days of editing before we upload. We every document gets looked at by 2 or 3 people before it gets uploaded. And that's
why you're successful.
I mean, it really took, people explained it's a full-time job to apply to these to get funded, and you can't take it. You can't rush it. And when you rush it, you're trying to make those phone calls to Monica, and you can't get a hold of her because, 100 other people are trying to get the last minute question answered. And so if you get those questions answered when the application deadline when it opens, then you're just that much further ahead.
And I should mention a couple of other kind of more housekeeping tips. You can go on the CMF website and apply or put in your email address so that you get all of the email blasts from the CMF, because then you'll be up to date as to when they're releasing the new guidelines. And also if they're doing, once this whole pandemic kind of, eases away, they do outreach tours where they have meetings with people, and so you can have more detailed questions. Right now, we're always available by phone, by email. Feel free to contact us. And then the other thing, that if you're planning on applying, don't wait to the last minute to apply to create the system that we use. It's called Dialogue. Don't wait to the last minute to create your account, because there are several steps on our side that have to happen in order to create that account. And sometimes it can take 2 or 3 days. So if you have any intention of applying, go ahead, create your dialogue account now so that it is up and ready to go as soon as you, like when you're wanting to apply for a program.
We have one more question. This is for Winifred. What's your dream story that you want to tell now that you've finished a story close to home, like Distant Cousins?
Distant Cousins is going to be a feature film, so I'm going to explore those characters in a more fulsome way. It flips back and forth between the 70s and current time, and to be able to tell an Asian story within 2 timelines following the same characters is like something that I'd love to do. You know, that's something. I also have a Asian sci-fi thriller that is in the beginning stages.
Any dream jobs in TV? A TV show that you would love to work on?
I've been working on so many. I've been like super lucky. Let's see. I would love to do a Star Trek. I would like to go to space. I would love to go to space.
And that's very possible. They shoot in Canada.
They shoot in Canada, yeah.
So now it's out there. They know you want to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the questions that we have. So thank you so much for doing this. I hope all the web series filmmakers out there are inspired and have gotten a lot of information in this case study. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I am inspired. There's so much information. It's so awesome. So thank you, Winifred, Monica, and Andrew, and everyone who tuning in with us today. And so where you can also check out the first season of Tokens at the National Film Board of Canada on the website, then nfb.ca. A couple final notes. So Canada Media Fund partner with the National Screen Institute they have the EAVE on Demand Access Program. It's a high impact training and entrepreneurship opportunity for a BIPOC producer. So apply it now by November 22nd. So you can learn more at the nsi-canada.ca. So our festival is still going. We're still going strong. And then we're showcasing some of your favorite films. It's until November 26th, next Friday. And also there is the Best of VAFF 25 at the VAFF.org. Last but not least, we still have a couple more panels next week. And so one of them is the Producer Essentials, a comprehensive guide to independent film production. So, and then after you watch that, join us on Tuesday to Ask Me Anything with Sean Colvett. So if you enjoy what you just saw, tell your friends, like our Facebook and Instagram at us at VAFF Vancouver, hashtag VAFF, hashtag VAFF25. And you guys have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful evening. Enjoy. Bye.